welcome back to a brand new series of Lab Talk Live. Before we get into this very special announcement we have coming up to kick off the series, if you haven't already, we have got an event coming up, so make sure you sign up below in the link. I'm going to hand over to Chorley to take us through this very special announcement.
Thanks, George. So I'm pleased to announce that Alkimi has been B Corp certified. We're one of only 2 other ad tech companies globally who has reached that certification. And basically what that means is we hit a lot of ESG goals, a small part through our product, but also how we run our company.
So for any of you that don't know what ESG is, it's environmental, social governance or social corporate governance. Do you want to talk about some of the things that we kind of had to go through just to give people a little bit more detail actually what being B Corp certified is?
Yeah, so essentially you're given a score for lots of different categories that fit into those ESG goals. Obviously, your product is important to that, but it's also about how you treat your employees, whether you recycle, and what you do within the wider society. So there's a lot of different things, and you are aiming to get a score of over 80, and we managed to score very highly on that. So we've been B Corp certified.
Fabulous. And I think, we shouldn't really take away of how much of a big deal this is. It's a really quite long process to go to, and it's really, stringently looked at. So, hats off to everyone involved in getting there. And that's why we're so excited to be talking about it today. Cool. So let's dig into it a little bit deeper and really how this came about, I think, is why Alkimi is a little bit different, and what you guys have actually built, opposed to other people within the ad tech industry. That's really what started the conversation around this. So can you just tell us a little bit why we are different to other players in the ad tech space?
Absolutely. Let's look at what the status of the industry was, the legacy ad tech providers, the ad tech solutions were. To start with, ad tech has always been a walled garden environment where every company, every product has operated behind walled gardens where people cannot look into their operations or they cannot challenge the transactions, or there's not a lot of transparency and auditability built into these products. And one of the side effects of not having the necessary transparency and auditability into a product is that it cannot be challenged. Every product, every organization can say what is the right thing to say. But are we really walking the talk, or are we just talking the talk? That is the big question. And we need to address the issue about walking the talk and how we can provide complete transparency and auditability into the operations of any product, any organization. And that, I think, is what sets Alkimi apart from the other tech providers.
Yeah, I think we always talk about having a single source of truth, which is obviously inherent within blockchain technology. But within the industry at the moment, most people mark their own homework, or they use a third-party vendor who doesn't really tell them how they're marking the homework, but tells them what the score is and how many impressions have been served. So by creating that single source of truth that is actually created by independent node validators, that means that we are not actually involved in marking our own homework. Somebody else is doing it for us, and I think that is a very key function of what Alkimi does, which really sets us apart from everybody else.
That's amazing. And I think that's why, we scored so highly specifically on that kind of green element of the business. Do you want to talk a little bit about the kind of current tech and how that's slightly outdated and how we solve that problem as well?
Absolutely. When I was talking about the whole walled gardens, what happens is one of the ways in which these walled gardens are built is by each product or organization having its own servers to perform its own processing. And there is a lot of processing or operations that happen within each product or organization that are replicated by other products or organizations within that supply chain. So because there is a lot of redundancy or duplication that is being done by each of these links in the supply chain, it leads to the amount of energy consumed or the carbon emissions out of the end-to-end supply chain, which is in actually rendering an impression to a user from an advertiser on a given publisher's site. But if we were to be transparent about each of the operations of these links in the supply chain, if we were to make it easily auditable, then we can rely on other links in the supply chain to do what they say they do and hence eliminate duplication, thereby reducing the carbon emissions. This is exactly what is being done on a very high level with Alkimi Exchange. Without going into too much of details, what we do is to remove the silos that are there, that are existing in the supply chain, and replace that with a network of decentralized nodes. And these decentralized nodes, as you all know, talk to each other in order to arrive at a consensus. So the data is transparent. Whatever is agreed as part of the consensus process is posted on the Ads Explorer, which serves as a single source of truth that is auditable, and hence we remove any redundancy that is there in the supply chain, thereby eliminating duplication and reducing carbon emissions.
Don't trust, verify, isn't it? That's basically
Yes,
what you do.
don't trust, verify.
I really like that. So I think what I've kind of taken from that really nice explanation is, you know, at the moment, a lot of the current players in the space are controlling the narrative and not really showing their fruit, kind of the workings behind it all. And what we've got is that immutable, you know, view that everyone can kind of go in, and then it's obviously done in a very decentralized way with the nodes. So that's really nice.
That's in fact, to add to that, you know, one of the side effects of removing redundancy and introducing transparency and auditability is that it results in a very high win rate. When there is a very high win rate, the number of bid requests that a DSP or an advertiser needs to respond to reduces greatly. And when the number of responses that are being sent is lowered, when the win rate is higher, you're not bidding on as many requests as you would, which means that every link in that supply chain is now consuming less energy in order to deliver on the same results. With a reduced number of responses, the advertiser or the DSP would achieve more impressions than they would have if they were to use Alkimi Exchange. On the publisher side, they don't have to send out as many bid requests. They don't have to display as many ads as they would have in order to hit the same revenue targets. I don't know the numbers at the top of my head, but there's a highly reduced number of ads that a website would have to show in order to hit the same revenue targets as they would have if they would have used a legacy exchange. The third part of this is that users, as a user who's visiting a website, I don't have to see as many ads. So I don't have to wait on JavaScript loads. My website becomes that much more responsive. The amount of energy that is consumed in order to actually access a website greatly reduces. So it's a win-win-win, not only for the user, the publisher, and the advertiser as well. Energy savings all over.
That does also have an effect on publishers' SEO as well, because most of that is based on JavaScript on page. So the less Java you have on the page, the more likely you are to rank highly as well. So there's all those net effects of all of the things that just changing that does.
Yeah, it's a bit of a domino, and I think that's really great. You know, ultimately the ethos of this company and why we're talking today about B Corp is trying to create a better place for the world. We're trying to create a better internet. All of this stuff all goes really nicely hand in hand. Now, I'm going to roll back a couple of moments where you talked about emissions, and at the moment, I know we've got some crazy stats that we can talk around about current kind of industry standards and what the ad tech industry is actually contributing to the kind of carbon emissions we're having today. Anyone got any off the top of their head they can fire out?
So the typical ad campaign uses 5.4 tons of carbon, which is the equivalent to half a UK household, which is kind of shocking when you think about it. That stat came from Goodloop, who are also a fellow B Corp certified ad tech business. And it just shows that when you see one ad campaign, there are thousands of those happening all the time. So the kind of net effect of that CO2 emission is very, very big. And again, by reducing that by a factor of at least 10, it will create way bigger advantages like further down the line as well, downstream. So the net effects of just reducing a small bit of carbon within the whole network will make the whole thing reduce overall as well.
Yeah, that's great. I think everything that we're talking about, setting the kind of tone that Alkimi have is just going to help improve all the things down the chain going forward and have that kind of larger impact on the environment. For those, probably in the ad tech space, maybe don't have a huge understanding of blockchain. When I first kind of got into the game, seemed like it was very energy efficient, not very energy efficient rather. Can you talk a little bit about that and how we've arrived to actually become, an efficient blockchain business?
Sure. So when blockchain was in its infancy, it was considered to be extremely energy inefficient, especially with proof of work protocol, where a complex mathematical problem had to be solved in order to arrive at consensus, in order to be involved in the whole consensus process. But now that has moved on. There are a lot of solutions whereby, like for example, Ethereum's proof of stake, where you don't have to really solve a complicated mathematical problem, thereby expend a lot of energy in arriving at consensus. So with state-of-the-art blockchain solutions, there are zero-knowledge proof rollups, there are, proof of stake, zero-knowledge proof, where we can actually arrive at consensus in a more energy-efficient manner, and then they are then rolled up in order to post transactions onto the blockchain. So these are very energy-efficient ways of arriving at consensus, of ensuring that there is not only transparency but also auditability. So gone are the days where we had to solve complex mathematical problems to arrive at consensus.
Yeah, I think, with tech, we see it happen in lots of other industries. As it evolves, it gets better. The first light bulb was probably pretty energy inefficient. Now we've got LED bulbs lighting most of our homes, right? So, I'm sure as we move on with the technology, it's just going to get better and better as well.
Absolutely.
Great. So I know other companies, and you probably hear across the industry about people offsetting their carbon emissions rather than trying to actually solve the root of the problem. Do you guys have any, examples of that, or want to talk about that a little bit more and why it's really important to remove the kind of offset nature of it and actually try to make your business more sustainable?
Yeah, I guess so. There's a shocking stat that the whole internet advertising industry uses more carbon than the Swedish manufacturing industry, which I guess when you think about how much like furniture and things like that is made by them is quite shocking. But the kind of way that offsetting works is not necessarily sustainable. It doesn't really solve the root cause of the problem. And it's not necessarily the best thing for the environment. Essentially, if you're using offsetting, a company has to do that. There is like leak in value from the offsetting of that carbon. So that means that the kind of actual amount of carbon that you're offsetting is probably not the same. And it's also a bit of a wild west sort of territory where there's lots of different businesses offering offsetting, but they're not necessarily regulated in any way. So there's no guarantee that by offsetting that you're actually going to offset the emissions that you're trying to get rid of. Yeah. So it's easier just to not make them in the first place. And that will actually kind of make the world a lot greener rather than trying to offset stuff that's already happened.
It feels like there's a recurring theme across some of these businesses and how people are approaching trying to almost like hack or loophole to kind of make themselves sustainable. What I'm taking from all of the conversation that you guys are kind of putting across is, the fact that we can share our homework and we've got nothing to hide is always great. The fact that we're talking about it and we're trying to, create a space where people can either learn or understand how they can improve it for their business is a really strong spot to be in.
Absolutely. There's a lot of room for improvement in order to introduce more efficient standards, in order to introduce more efficient operations. So why not? Why take the easy route where, we do offsetting in order to compensate for what is essentially an inefficient process? Let's get to the root of the problem. Let's fix it at the root and say, let's fix the underlying issue, which is the inefficiency in the system. Let's take that head on and address that issue without trying to divert the issue and go towards offsetting. That's my take on it.
I think another thing that as well that people forget is that if you're using trees, for example, to offset, you're only offsetting CO2, and obviously pollution comes in many different forms. Like greenhouse gases are a range of gases that are bad for the environment, things like methane, like the fact that heavy metals are also involved in like burning fossil fuels. just by planting trees, you're not really achieving anything there. You're getting rid of one of a plethora of problems.
Yeah, it's like a plaster on the side of a sinking ship, right? This is great. I think if we want to think about what people want to take away from this conversation, maybe other business owners that are thinking about going B Corp status. I mean, I guess even if you don't get it, you're going to really understand where you sit within the within the sphere, and maybe understand things that you can do to improve your business.
Yeah, and I think, it is a global community that's based around making improvements across like a lot of different areas, and it's always that kind of thing. It's like, be the change you want to see in the world, and I think if you're part of that community, you're making a difference on a lot of different things.
Nice. So, what's our commitment now we are B Corp certified? What does that look like, and how does that look year on year, guys?
So we regularly have to report back on a lot of the topics that are raised as part of being B Corp. So there'll be things like our gender pay gap, and then how we're doing on kind of recycling and having a green office, which we also have. So over the next 3 years, we get checked on a lot of things, and then we have to kind of essentially get rescored at the end of that 3 years to make sure we're doing all the things that we said that we were going to do.
Yeah, so it's not just like a one and done, and I guess that's a really good advice for any business. This is about being sustainable for the kind of prolonged future. It's not just about kind of getting a tick and then whacking it on your website. This is really, like you said before, about being part of that community. And then I guess, as we look to grow, how does that look? How are we going to kind of handle that as we expand the business and Alkimi goes to the moon?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we're a small company at the moment, so the effects that we're having are kind of smaller, but at the same time, as we grow, we kind of bring other businesses with us on this journey of being more efficient with the kind of energy usage, lower CO2 emissions, showing them a score for the CO2 that is emitted by their ad campaigns. All of those sorts of things help other businesses understand what they do and the effect that they have on the environment. So, whilst we're starting small now, obviously we hope to get a lot bigger, and as part of that, will help a lot more businesses understand their effect on the environment.
Yeah, and that's why we're chatting about this today, right? It's education as well as just kind of awareness about this in the space, which is great. Cool. I think before we wrap it up, just want to say thanks so much for listening. If you want to see us live in the flesh, we've got an event coming up at the end of November. Link is below. Sign up, and thank you all so much.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.